roses and
I guess I should make a wish.
Hi, I'm Michael Gibson, and I'm the co-founder of Brush Salon in Vancouver, where I've devoted my life to the world of beauty. Today, there is a more important topic I want to discuss. As a kid, I was lucky. My dad, a literal teddy bear of a man standing at 6'4", was the kind of dad who made sure we lived life to the fullest. Not only was he a caring figure, but he was also an excellent provider, taking us on vacations to Spain, England, Maui, and more.
What do you think, Michael? First trip through the Rockies.
He was a man who truly seized the day, an avid skier who had competed professionally and a lover of golf and loved a good beach day. But around my 18th birthday, things started to shift. I came home and saw something new in his eyes. Fear. It was as if a light had dimmed and a part of him was lost. Then came a day in winter. Our house was freezing, and oddly, insulation was stuffed in every vent. My dad, when questioned, merely shrugged it off, stating that we needed fresh air. He started to retreat into himself, and it was around this time I began to understand that something was off and could sense the anguish he was experiencing. One day, he handed me a letter that began to solidify everything I was feeling. He believed he was being chased by the RCMP and the government was attempting to poison us. He was convinced that we had to get out and leave our home. This wasn't just fear, it was terror. My dad, my monumental leader, was scared, and I didn't know how to help him. Things escalated from there. For several years, my dad roamed Canada alone, seeking refuge in different hotels, convinced that the RCMP and the government were after him. Every time I visited him, there was a familiar pattern. Vents blocked with insulation, my dad trapped in a constant state of fear and paranoia. This wasn't the father I knew from my childhood. He was different now. Despite our constant efforts, he refused therapy, firmly believing the police were after him. This led me to wonder if he was involved in some sort of illegal activity, although deep down I knew what he needed was professional help. We admitted him for psychiatric evaluations several times, and each time he was let go in less than 24 hours, saying that he was not a danger to himself or others, despite our pleas and knowledge of his erratic behavior. I found out the darkest news of my life on October 31st. It was the kind of news no kid, no matter how old, ever wants to hear. My dad was gone. My dad was stopped at a roadblock, and that's when it started, a drawn-out, high-speed chase with the cops. The irony of it all was my dad was deathly afraid of the police, and here he was, living his worst nightmare, with several cop cars behind him. Things spiraled out of control. His car hit into a cop car and hit a spike belt, which had him at a standstill. When the cops surrounded his car and got to him, they found him in pain, with multiple self-inflicted stab wounds to his chest. It's extremely painful to imagine how terrified he must have been. That moment, underlining a battle with undiagnosed mental health issues that I'm convinced led to this tragic ending. For years after, I was weighed down by guilt, constantly asking myself, what if I had done something different? Spent a bit more time with him, could I have changed the outcome? A family meeting that I can't forget was one held with my grandpa, auntie, mom, sister, and a few others. It was during this meeting that my grandpa's words, as far as I'm concerned, he died in a car accident, resonated within me, and for the longest time that was the narrative that I shared when speaking about my dad's demise. Back then, I didn't recognize the generational implications of this mindset. how my grandpa's era found it easier to brush mental health issues under the carpet. I do not blame him, and it was how things were at the time. More recently, I have started telling the truth about my dad's struggle and pain, acknowledging the undiagnosed mental health issues he experienced. Although we can only speculate what he was dealing with, my best guess would be schizophrenia or psychosis, shining a light on a silent battle that so many people experience alone. But one particular phrase lingers in my mind: man dead of self-inflicted stab wounds in high-speed car chase. Reading these words, digesting their meaning, had a detrimental impact on my emotional well-being. The loss I felt was like nothing I'd ever experienced. My father, one of the most influential and significant figures in my life, was gone. To maintain our privacy during this painful time and allow for our family's healing process, we opted not to release his name publicly. Following this experience and my own experience with mental health issues, my life was a struggle. For the first time, I dealt with depression and intense anxiety after my dad's death. For years, I found refuge in partying and nightlife as a means to navigate through the darkness. In all honesty, I found it challenging to see a way out. The memory of what happiness looked like faded, and I couldn't visualize the light at the end of the tunnel. Therapy became my lifeline. By seeking professional help, I managed to address what had happened. The underlying pain that had settled within me, and began to share the truth about my father's story. Over time, I rediscovered my voice, feeling more comfortable in expressing both his experience and my own. From everything I've been through, I'm determined to make an impact. I aim to break the cycle of the generational stigma that surrounds the conversation of mental health. My hope is that by sharing my story, it will empower others to feel comfortable and open up about their own struggles with mental health, whether it's within themselves, with friends, or within their families. It took a considerable amount of strength for me to reach a point where I can speak openly about these challenges, and even now, it's not always easy. But my ultimate dream is to raise both awareness and funds for the Canadian Mental Health Association. Together, through raising awareness and resources, I believe we can truly make a difference. I've never considered myself superstitious, and for the longest time, the idea of the supernatural or an afterlife seemed a bit unlikely to me. However, something happened when I visited my father's body after his passing. It changed my perspective entirely. Stepping into the room where he lay, still like a figure in a wax museum, the ambient lights began to flicker as I drew nearer. With each step, the flickering grew more intense. I could sense his presence. He was there in that space. It was a surreal encounter, one of the most profound experiences of my life. Later, as I sat in his car, I felt him there with me. At that moment, I felt the need to speak to him. "Dad, are you here with me? If you are, can you please give me a sign?" The radio and the music stopped. I hastily tried to turn them back on. The silence hung in the air for what felt like an eternity before the radio unexpectedly resumed playing after 20 seconds. In that moment, there was no doubt in my mind. He was there with me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so listen. That's the way look at him coming down.
Smaller. Hey, Bob. Yeah, dump the water out of there. Atta boy.